In the early days of the internet, radical libertarians were scattered, lonely, and faceless. Without direction, they resigned to scour the web, sifting through content providers in a wasteland plagued by YouTube demonetization, Facebook jail, and covert internet censorship. But then, in 2017, the Libertarian Union was formed. Finally, the average Joe libertarian could find a thriving community of independent podcasters and content providers, all in one convenient location. At Libertarian Union, we'll always have the latest news, interviews, discussions, and even movie reviews. With hundreds of episodes and more added all the time, you'll always find something fresh at libertarianunion.com.
Hey everyone, it's Daniel and Robert, the Last Nighters, and we are doing episode 51 of the show on Elf, a very Christmas movie that I'm sure will have a whole bunch of acrimony between Robert and I. So much so, that he's going to be doing. Yes, and we are recording this on Festivus, the night before Christmas. And so as part of the airing of grievances, Robert shall be doing the duties of the Google description. So if you will, sir.
Yeah, I'm going to say I'm angry too. Like I'm angry about him. Daniel did something. So Elf was rated parental guidance because, I guess it couldn't be G. There are some like adult situations, I guess. I don't know. Who knows? 2003 fantasy romance. 1 hour, 37 minutes. Buddy, played by aging comedian Will Ferrell, was accidentally transported to the North Pole as a toddler and raised to adulthood among Santa's elves. Unable to shake the feeling that he doesn't fit in, the adult Buddy travels to New York City. In full elf uniform.
Get a rope.
In search of his real father. Real, as it happens, this is Walter Hobbs, played by stunningly handsome young comedian James Caan, a cynical businessman. After a DNA test proves this, Walter reluctantly attempts to start a relationship with the childlike Buddy with increasingly chaotic results. Release date November 7, 2003. Director Jon Favreau. Box office of 220.4 million USDs. 6.9 out of 10 on the IMDb's. 83% Rotten Tomatoes, 64% Metacritic, and 91% of Google users approve of this film. So what do you think of that angry description of the movie Elf, Daniel?
What do I think of them apples? I think that there is a good reason why I normally do the Google description.
Because I did it better and you're jealous?
It's jealousy. No, yeah, it's
I'm gelling.
It's pretty accurate to the movie. I mean, there's not a whole lot really going on here. It's a vehicle to make Will Ferrell be able to be funny and childlike and wrap a little bit of Christmas spirit around it. Shed a few tears here and there, and there you go. You got an elf movie.
Yeah, this movie seemed to me to be a lot like a lot of the Jim Carrey vehicles or other kind of movies where it's just kind of an excuse for a comedian to do a lot of funny things. So there's a bunch of like gags where he's kind of a fish out of water and he's walking around New York and he doesn't know how things work and what's this thing? And I'm going to just eat gum and old gum and I don't know how escalators work or how rotating doors work or whatever. And it's like, okay, I guess maybe a 7-year-old would laugh at this. I don't know.
Well, it made sense to me that growing up in the North Pole that he would not be familiar with those things. And so you can kind of get away with the fish out of water play a bit. And I don't think they harp on it too much.
No, I mean, it's kind of like a montage, like a 10-minute montage of him being wild and wacky.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. And by the way, The Last Nighters is part of the Launchpad Media, where they're always launching new ideas in your direction. I always forget to mention that until way too late in the show. We really should open with that. But do check it out at thelaunchpadmedia.com. Super good stuff there.
I agree.
And one other thing, since we're in the announcement mode, Tom Wood's Liberty Classroom is on sale right now for the next couple of days, right around Christmas. So if you do have any inkling to get that for yourself with the money from Grandma, the $3 she tapes into the card. It's 35% off right now. And if you get the master membership, you get all of his courses that he created for the Ron Paul homeschool curriculum as well. And the one I recommend the most there is the course on government. It's 90 lessons, and you get a full dissertation of, where rights originated historically and different forms of government and the consequences of each. And it's really quite good. So do check that out. And if you buy on our affiliate link, we would greatly appreciate it, and also give you some free bonuses like a membership to readit4.me, which is a service where you get business books and self-improvement books summarized in 10 or 15-minute chunks so that you can get 80% of the content in about 5% of the time that it would take to go through that book as if you were to do it on your own. So it's a big time saver, and it will be yours gratis if you buy it on our affiliate link. So check that out at lastnighters.com/Liberty Classroom. Now, out of announcement mode, back into Elf. Robert, where do you want to take us on this journey through the candy cane forest and then through the Lincoln Tunnel?
Well, why don't we start at the beginning, Daniel? I suppose that's a decent place to start.
Let's do that.
At the very, very, very beginning, well, there's like Bob Newhart like talking to you. But after that, then they're up at the North Pole, and young Buddy Elf has grown into be middle-aged Will Ferrell, and he is trying to be a toy assembler guy, but he can only do like 2078 Etch-a-Sketches, and everybody else is doing like 900. And he's upset. So they put him into quality control, and he's still not great at that. And he's just not an elf. He's just not an elf. He's a human trying to be an elf. And I don't know why humans are so inferior to elves, but they just are, I guess. I guess this movie's trying to make a statement about the inferiority of humans. But anyway, you made an interesting point that was instantly disputed by a friend of mine that the North Pole is socialist. And so I was going to give you the opportunity to defend yourself, sir. Defend your argument if you can, because, it's kind of a claim. It's kind of a claim where you'd back up that claim and then talk about it. So why don't you start off and try and defend your claim, sir?
All right, so this will be a feat of strength. And this is actually related to a little bit further back and in Bob Newhart's opening to the story, where he says there are only 3 types of jobs that elves can even do. One is being a shoemaker while the lazy cobbler sleeps. The other is being a baker in an oak tree, especially during the dry season, which is a bad combination because then the tree catches on fire. And then the third and final is what they call the show, which is like being called up to the big leagues in baseball, where they work in Santa's workshop creating toys for all the good girls and boys on Santa's naughty and nice list. And the elves are specially suited for this due to their nimble fingers and quick minds that make them very well suited to the task. And I think that often gets conflated with the bad, poor taste jokes about child labor in third world countries where they have tiny little quick hands. And but I will actually defend child labor in a certain respect, in that it's a better thing that they're doing than what their alternative might be. So some do-gooder might go out and try to prevent them from being able to have that opportunity, and then they'll end up doing something even worse. And that's unfortunately what people who try to do good often have unintended consequences that are actually worse off for those that they're supposedly trying to help. And we can get into that if you'd like, Robert. Totally unrelated to Elf in a way. But anyway, my point with it being a bit socialist is that it's sort of a totalitarian system of elves are only able to have movement into 3 occupations, like they are prevented by some outside force. I would assume that this would be some kind of a governmental force or backed by a monopoly on violence. It is not a free market of being able to enter into any occupation freely and moving among occupations. So that was my argument for why I would consider it socialist or totalitarian control.
All right. Well, but you're using a lot of inferring. I mean, yes, the saying that there's only 3 jobs is first of all, it's clearly a joke. But since we don't care about jokes, we need to take this stuff seriously.
I can take it as a joke. It's fine.
Well, the whole Keebler elf joke, and then the elf making the cobbling shoes when the lazy cobbler is asleep. I mean, those are references to other things, to other, stories, not to like this cohesive world that they have built.
Right. Yes. And that's all they're supposed to be, is like little nods to other things, little tips of the hat, so to speak. They're not writing a movie as a treatise on economics here.
Definitely not, because if this is a socialist world, it apparently works, but only due to the fact that Santa seems to have an inexhaustible supply of materials with which to craft his toys.
Right. It's the Garden of Eden model. There's no scarcity.
So there's no scarcity. He has magic to back it up. Whereas socialism will work for a certain amount of time, as a la like Venezuela. But once the magic of oil dries up, or the ability to harvest the oil due to government incompetence and driving out private investors because you're stealing their land and their businesses, then it all dries up and it all collapses. So if the North Pole were to suddenly suffer some sort of magic shortage and they couldn't make toys, I would imagine that they would quickly stop operating.
Yeah, well, they do have a shortage of Christmas spirit, right? And that's why they need the Nimbus 5000 for the power boost on the Santa sleigh to be able to get it off the ground. Due to the lack of Christmas spirit that would normally make it fly.
Yeah, I loved that, actually. That was one of the things in the movie that I was fully on board with. They're like, well, yeah, but it only runs due to Christmas spirit. And we're running low on that. So we also got this backup, rocket thing. And I just love the fact that it's, it's just Christmas spirit. And it's this nebulous thing, this ethereal thing that can't be can't be counted. It can't be, even though there's a meter on the dash that can count it somehow, the audience isn't explained, how actually it all works or anything like that. And we're just like, yeah, sure, Christmas spirit. That's what powers the sleigh. Go for it. Who cares? I actually really like that.
Yeah, I think that was well done. I think a lot of the stuff in here is just nods to things and a way to get some cutesiness in there and move the story along a little bit.
Yeah, now I wouldn't call Santa like a Hugo Chavez kind of style dictator guy. He seemed to be a pretty okay chap. He let Buddy just leave. And usually socialist hellholes, they really kind of like restrict movement of people.
Like put up walls?
Yes, put up walls, like in Berlin.
Yeah, and oddly enough, this is somewhat recent events, but Talib Kweli, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right correctly, but he was getting into a Twitter beef with Tom Woods a few months back, related to questions of secession, and Tom Woods is a historian, and Talib Kweli is a rapper, and Kweli's basic response to everything was, "You're a white supremacist Nazi," to pretty much anyone, regardless of their race, creed,
checkmate, Woods, bigot.
So anyway, Kweli apparently just the other day tweeted about the Berlin Wall being built by capitalists to
what?
Keep the
what?
He had it totally backwards, right? He blamed capitalists. He blamed the Nazis. He called the Nazis capitalists, and
the Nazis who didn't exist anymore,
and blamed them for building the Berlin Wall.
Nazis,
yes,
who did not exist anymore.
Right. Well, not in any structure of power.
The political
in no way building
movement
the wall
that ran Germany up until the end of World War II, and then Berlin, which was divided down east and west, one half being controlled by the Western powers and the other half being controlled by the USSR. And the USSR built the wall to restrict people from fleeing west towards more economic freedom. And he's saying capitalists and the Nazis built the wall? The Nazis didn't exist as a political entity when the wall was built.
Right. And so he basically had it all backwards, and people were correcting him on Twitter, left and right on this thing. And it's just kind of a funny, weird thing. But the Nazis were not involved in any way. And there were people leaving East Germany. And to stem the tide of people leaving East Germany, they built the wall. And I think, what did you say, 1961? And actually, Hans Hermann Hoppe discusses this in his book, Democracy, the God That Failed, the book that we referred to extensively on our previous episode on the Outlaw King, or Outlaw King, not the Outlaw King.
Yeah. Now, when I say the Nazis didn't exist, I mean, they didn't control Berlin. I mean, there were some in Argentina. Some had come over. Some Nazi scientists had come over to the United States through Operation Paperclip, but they didn't control Berlin, and they certainly didn't build the wall. That's just, I don't know where he's getting that. But I've heard of this guy. I know many people in the freedom movement, argue back and forth with this dude, and he appears to be some sort of lost cause. But whatever. Fun fodder, I guess.
Fun fodder, yeah, and he's got 1 million followers. I'm not sure how many he paid for, but it is kind of funny and interesting to see people so bad at the history of things that they twist everything into everyone else being pure evil. So that's always fun. But let's get back to this movie and this idea that you brought up where Will Ferrell isn't good at anything. And the other elves actually make note of this to try to make him feel better, that he's good at like changing light bulbs or testing the smoke detector. And, you'll have to do that again in like 6 months.
Yeah, that was cute that they still love the guy, even though he was like a giant guy. He still had his uses. He was still useful. He could still do things, even if I think that, that was all played up for, comedic stuff. But it sure seems like a big, strong dude who's way taller than you would have a significant amount of uses, even though it's not clear, what actually gets made or built or is necessary. I mean, can Santa just wave his magic Santa wand and make things appear, or what? Or
well, they got to actually assemble the components, like for the Etch-a-Sketches, right? And that's where Ming Ming has the quota for Buddy of 1,000, and he's only done like 85, so he's 915 off the pace. So Buddy is very, very ill-suited to this, and that's where they get into the other talents. And by the way, and Anarchist Mom just reminded me of this. Peter Billingsley from A Christmas Story is Ming Ming, so he's doing a bit of a Christmas genre cameo for this movie.
Oh, that's nice. Nice little cameos for Christmas. I mean, Christmas Story is a classic.
Yeah, maybe that's one we could do next year, perhaps. Do the leg lamp and the shoot your eye out stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's a movie that in my family we watched year after year after year. And so it's got a bit of nostalgia for me.
Yeah, I'd be down with that. And, now Elf is going to have, in my family, a bit of a nostalgia, because during the blackout of Christmas 2018 that we had here, we had downloaded Elf before the blackout in anticipation, because we knew that the windstorm was happening, and I knew that we were going to be doing this movie for the show this week. And as a result of not having any other options, we watched Elf 2.5 times with kids, and they love this movie, by the way.
Were they laughing, or they just enjoyed it?
They mostly laughed at the troll farting, and a few other
hilarious,
a few other spots. They really enjoyed it. They do like Elf, and they have asked to watch it again. But they're also at that age, and actually, Buddy plays this up pretty well, where they want to watch things again and again and again. Like as soon as it ends, they want to watch it again, and they plow through life. Like every project they do, or everything they do, even before they're done doing it, and there's a mess everywhere, they move on to the next thing, and then to the next thing, and then to the next thing. And as a parent, you can't keep up with them. It's like you're running 100 miles an hour in this direction, and then you turn on a dime, go this direction. And Buddy does that very well, especially in the doctor scene where Favreau makes his cameo, where he's like totally scattered and like, what's that over there? And he's eating cotton balls, and oh, I made him mad. Oh, what's that thing? Oh, can I listen to your necklace? And when he does that, my wife and I just looked at each other like, yep, that's our kids right there. Definitely. They do that all the time.
So as a parent, you got some extra added value out of this film.
Oh, yes, most definitely. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to bring up was the montage of when he discovers that he's a human, and he like gets all dizzy and falls down, and he remembers, his shoes not fitting or the shower being super small. There's a picture of him playing basketball with the elves, and he's like dominating. And I love that picture for some reason.
Yeah, because they play on like a 7-foot rim or something like that, and he's just reaching up and dunking.
Indeed.
Manute Bull versus Muggsy Buggs.
So where do we want to go from here? You already talked about Walter Hobbs a little bit, who is his father, and he's on the naughty list. And he's presented as an evil capitalist in this movie, and I think that's pretty much par for the course in most movies and media. But essentially, it boils down to him working too hard and kind of neglecting his family. Like his son kind of is missing a bond with his father, as we discover a little bit later on.
Yeah, but can we talk about the laziness with which it slaps capitalism?
Let's talk about the laziness of that, because are you talking about the nun thing? Because I that pissed me off quite a bit, actually.
The nun thing?
Yeah, where we first meet Walter, and he's collecting the books back from the nun. Like he's meeting with her, and she's like, "You're going to take the books from the children?" And he's like, "Well, you didn't pay for the books."
Yeah.
So yeah.
Go right ahead, Daniel. Do you got some more to say about that?
Well, it's just presented as he's this heartless, evil guy.
Right. As if capitalism only cares about the absolute bottom line, as if there's no such thing as public relations and good press. And I mean, part of the equation with which consumers use when they're purchasing a product is this a conscientious company? They're not just providing the lowest value. Sometimes, you'll go and you'll buy a product and you'll pay a little bit more for it if you know that you approve of the way in which a company does business, if you like the people that are in that business. So
sure. Yeah. People buy locally or buy American, even at their economic expense, because they feel better about it.
And they'll boycott companies when they perceive them to be doing, things they disapprove of. Or they'll just, choose a competitor, a higher price competitor. Or they'll actively air grievances. Thank you.
Festivus. Call back.
Thank you. On social media about, look at this terrible company doing X, Y, and Z, and how terrible are they? And everybody should not, use their business like I am. Aren't I great?
Right. But in this specific instance, where he says he's taking the books back, and he says, well, I see what you're trying to do here, and I'm not taking them back. You're not paying for them. And she says, but the children love the books. And he responds, I know, I did. I ran the focus groups. But my point is she didn't pay for them. So he's totally within his right to take back unpaid for product, right? I mean, sure, it's kind of shitty. And you're right. He could be charitable, but he's under no obligation to be charitable. I mean, they had an agreement in place and she didn't follow through on her end of the agreement.
100%. And why would he? What about this evil nun who's trying to steal books from him? Why isn't that side played up?
Well, you know exactly why. It's because the capitalist is always the evil twirling mustache villain in most entertainment, most TV and movies.
And the nun is virtuous, therefore she deserves free books. I understand. Sure. Where's your heart, Daniel? I mean, it's just a whole bunch of people who worked to make those books, and they don't deserve any money for making those books, do they? I mean, the printer doesn't deserve any money. I mean, it's not like it cost him resources and time and doesn't have people to feed. His employees don't deserve any money or food.
Right. And it's not even that they deserve it or that they should be guaranteed it. It's that they take the entrepreneurial risk of putting it out on the marketplace in hopes that somebody will be satisfied enough to exchange their goods and services or mediums of exchange, so money in this case, to make that trade in a mutually beneficial situation.
But by robbing James Caan of these books, this nun isn't just robbing him. She's robbing everybody making those books, not just this one greedy capitalist guy.
Right. Yes. Yeah. In a way, like as long as James Caan's character, Walter Hobbs, has paid the printer or paid, the wages of the people making the books, then he's on the hook for the loss. Right.
Right. But if he doesn't have the money, if he doesn't get the money from the nun, then he's less likely to purchase more books from these printers.
In the future. Yes.
In the future.
Right.
Anyway, so there's that. And then there's the callous way in which he doesn't want to fix a book that doesn't have all its pages.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Because it's missing 2 pages of the book, and I guess it's the end of the story, and it's this children's book. And he decides, well, we could reprint it and it'll cost us $30,000, or we can just ship it. No one's going to read it anyway. People are going to buy the book, but the kids aren't going to read it, or they're not going to understand it, or whatever. No one's going to care. As
if capitalists are so focused on short-term profit and not taking the long view of what that decision would do for his customers. If he starts shipping out crappy books without pages, readers are going to notice whether he thinks they will or not. And in fact, they do later on in the movie. And he would know this. This is ridiculous. This is a cartoonish depiction of a capitalist. You wouldn't necessarily, sometimes people do sacrifice long-term for short-term, but this is like an established business where they have a reputation to consider.
Right, and they've been profitable for years. The owner is very upset that they're going to take a loss in that quarter.
Yeah, and they got to consider, the future, the long-term future. You can't, if the minute you start shipping crappy books, you're opening yourself up for a competitor to steal your market share. Not steal, but rightfully take your market share.
Right, better satisfy consumers.
Right, exactly. So this is just like a cartoonish, ridiculous depiction of a capitalist and saying that this guy's evil. I mean, you could say that he's just a bad businessman, but that's really not what they're saying. It really isn't. They're trying to paint this guy as like your typical work too much, screw people over bad guy. And that's why he's got to have a turn later on where he like redeems himself and quits. And I have issues with that as well.
Oh, we'll get there. We will get there, boss.
Good.
But I have a real world corollary to the missing the couple of pages of the book. So my kids are really into Paw Patrol right now. And by the way, it's going to be a Paw Patrol Christmas, man. It's going to be ridiculous in a day or two here.
Oh, lots of doggies.
Oh, yeah. But because Paw Patrol is a very popular and lucrative, quote unquote, property, they crack down on copyright infringement pretty extensively. And so as a result, any version of their show that you see on YouTube is altered in many ways. And one of the key ways is that they will play about 10 seconds of whatever the show is and then jump cut to like 5 or 10 seconds later. And so the kids will be watching an episode. And as a parent, you're like, wait, what the hell just happened? Wait, why are they over there now? Wait, that person got cut off mid-sentence and now they're over here? But the kids, they do not care. All they see are cartoon pups on there flying around doing crazy stuff. And the jump cut stuff does not bother them one bit. And that's how I interpreted Walter Hobbs's response to the kids aren't going to care about these 2 missing pages in the book because they're going to look at the pictures and not really follow the story anyway. And the parents are going to buy the book and everything, no one's going to really notice this thing. Of course, he turned out to be wrong. But
it is interesting though, right? I mean, there may be a market for that level of quality. I mean, that's the beauty of the market there. It suits all tastes. Maybe these books get discounted and you're right. The parents wouldn't care. And maybe the kids wouldn't care. And the parents would just be like, yeah, I got this for like 50 cents. I mean, who cares? And they read it and they still enjoy it anyway.
Yeah. So I feel like we just spent a huge chunk of our Festivus episode on that totally ancillary point. Let's move along a little bit to another quirky little thing. Jon Favreau's brother is in this movie as the taller security guard who kicks him out of the Empire State Building, kicks Buddy out, and tells him to go to Gimbel's, where they're having a meet Santa and tell him what you want.
Yeah. I didn't recognize Favreau's brother, but right on. It's fun for a director to get to put your friends and family into movies. Why not? I would say that the security company and the company that works at that place has every right to eject Will Ferrell or Buddy at any time for any reason. So yeah, get him out of here. The security, he's not leaving. The security, please escort this person out. I have no problem with that. Sure.
Right?
Physically remove him. Physically remove him. If he will not leave private property and he's being asked to leave, he's unwanted, he's trespassing. So please leave. Do so, in as gentle as way possible. But if he's going to go kicking and screaming and you're dragging him out of there, then you're dragging him out of there. You're under no obligation to, house this person. You just aren't.
Right. And I think this was another situation of the fish out of water where he didn't understand kind of the customs of what goes on in an office building. And so he sings the weird song and does crazy things. And then they kick him out and physically remove him. And they tell him to go to Gimbel's because there's the Santa thing there. And there he hits on Jovi, the singing little elf, dressed as an elf. She's a human. Did you find that his interaction with her was problematic in any way in today's context? I mean, granted, this movie was only 15 years ago. But in my recent viewing of it, I found that how he interacted with her and how she rebuffed him rather forcefully in many respects, that people would view that in a new light, much like they view the song that they sing as a duet later on in a new light these days.
Well, this is interesting. I didn't see anything in their interaction as being like Me Too-ish or problematic in that sense. I just saw that they were singing "Baby It's Cold Outside" and he was like creeping on her in the bathroom as being, problematic. And I hate that word, but I'm going to use it ironically. But you're saying that the way that they spoke to each other would be some sort of an issue. So
right.
Please, how so, sir?
This is when he first meets her. He goes up to her at the tree and starts talking to her, and she's like, why are you messing with me? And he says, I'm just sharing your affinity for elf culture. And they get into talking about singing or having Christmas spirit. And she's like, I don't sing. And he grabs her by the shoulders or like blocks her path because she's trying to walk away from him or get by him. And he prevents her from doing so.
Ooh.
And
yeah, that's a little intimidating.
Right. Now, in 2003, probably not that big of a deal. He's trying to have a conversation with her. And he's, in the context of the movie, he's very innocently doing this, right? But I think, everything's viewed through a new lens these days. And that lens is very distorted into viewing everything as potentially rapey.
Yeah. It's interesting that, probably the elves are like super long lived, right? I think they say that at one point in the movie, like his dad became a head whatever at like age 900 or something.
Yeah, Papa Elf was like 400 and some odd or 900 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, so are all elves when they're 30, 35, are they all still childlike? Or do they just not do a good job raising kids? Or would any of those elves be as, wondrous and ignorant and just kind of like childlike to any other human?
All right, so I'm going to pretend that we're at this used car dealership, and I'm just going to tell you, don't look under the hood, man. Don't look into the...
Too late. I will look
appropriately to not be infantile-like.
It seemed like he was the only
30.
infant in the movie. All the other elves in the North Pole seemed like perfectly normal, human, competent people. Elves.
Mm-hmm. Very elvy, yeah.
Yeah, elvy, but, like smart and like competent and know what they're doing. And if they had gone to New York, they'd be like perfectly normal, elfy people. But Will Ferrell, for some reason, even though he's 30 years old, acts like a big dumb baby the whole movie. So it's not like he's just an elf. He's a dumb baby elf, which is weird.
Right. Yeah. I think you're right in that they probably didn't think that deeply into this. They just wanted Will Ferrell to be able to act childlike and in wonderment and awe of everything. And even though he is a human and raised by elves, he actually does have some magical abilities, which kind of bothered me a bit in that, well, he's just a human. So how can he, throw these machine gun style snowballs at these kids? And how can he do that, snip, 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 and then he expands this, intricate cutouts of snowflakes or those little banner things that you fold it up and you cut it once and then you expand it out and it's like this big banner of shapes.
And he only needs to sleep like 15 minutes a night and he can decorate that entire Gimbals in one night.
Right, yeah. So there is some magic going on with this guy.
Yeah. And the machine gun snowball thing, I think, was done for like a visual gag, but it was very much like, wait a minute, this guy's just a human, right? It's not like they taught him secret elf techniques. Maybe, but it didn't, I don't know.
Now, about that snowball thing, did it seem to you that the bully kids threw way too many snowballs for the given time period?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think there were a whole bunch of CGI snowballs that like were endlessly flowing. Because there was like a hailstorm, like a rain of snowballs. There was just an impossible number from just the like 5 or 6 kids that were throwing them.
Right, from all directions. I mean, yeah, it was right. Like they all had the same elf ability.
Right. Yeah, there was like a horde of them all shuffling constantly, and they had made, hundreds of these things until Buddy somehow turns the tables and is like a sniper with this endless ability.
Yeah, he had a bump stock on his arm for
the right. Anyway. It'll get made illegal.
So baby, it's cold outside. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Okay, well we have talked about this on the show before, but I think it was maybe in a little Kathleen Turner overdrive. So I have no issue with a radio station not wanting to play a song. I mean, I don't care. You can play whatever song you want. But you got to say that it's kind of hilarious that, yes, I understand that, proclivities change over time. And you think of yourself as more enlightened and whatever, and more sensitive to, I don't know, rape culture or whatever the feminists have people believing in these days. I don't know. But Baby It's Cold Outside, in my view, is kind of an empowering song for a woman. It's a woman trying to guard her reputation, and they're kind of bemoaning and trying to come up with excuses of reasons to stay and be with this man that she wants to be with. And they're talking about, well, we should leave. Yeah, I want to stay. They're coming up for excuses to stay. So it's not like this pressure rapey vibe. It's these two people that really want to be together instead of, but she has to guard her reputation to the society at large.
Right, because the social norms are that she shouldn't do that because she would be seen as some kind of a floozy or a slutty or something.
Right. So, but the modern feminist movement has said that, no, this is like this dude pressuring her to stay, and so he can like roofie her or whatever. And yeah, it just seems to be getting the wrong end of the stick. I don't know. It's real dumb, but that's pretty much everything they do in my view is just real dumb. But it's funny that this happens in this movie because if they had made this movie today, or if they make a sequel to this, I don't think that they'll include it.
Right. Now, Will Ferrell has said on multiple occasions he will not do a sequel to this. And now that he's like 50 years old compared to 30, 35 when he made this. He probably wouldn't be nearly as nimble. But it's still, this song does strike me as a bit odd in this movie. And I think that maybe they were more looking at it as, well, it's kind of Christmassy and it's a duet and we need a duet.
Right. Because, yeah, they have this storyline going on where it's where Buddy says, the best way to spread Christmas cheer is to sing out loud, something, right?
For all to hear.
For all to hear. So when he first meets her, he's asking about how she sings. And then he finds out she has a really good voice. And so then at the very end of the movie, then she has a little bit of a character development moment and she starts to sing in front of other people where before she didn't want to do that. She's only going to sing in the shower. So everybody's got a little bit of character development. It doesn't take much. It's just a comedy. So you can't expect a whole lot of character development. But most characters do have a little bit of growth. You got the James Caan character who has a little bit of growth, even though it's dumb. And we'll get into it. But yeah, the Zooey Deschanel character has the singing thing, and that's her character development. So yeah, right. Maybe it's a little bit odd, but for the plot, I understand why it's there.
Right, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that particular song. It just ticked a couple of the boxes, I think, that they were looking for.
Right. Yeah, there has to be a scene where he hears her singing and has to say that, man, she's got a great voice. And then later on, she's got to sing out loud, Christmas cheer so that the sleigh can fly.
Right, but not only does he have to hear her singing, but he also has to join her in singing it to get the the locker room scene to work.
Yeah. And then there's a comedic moment where he slams into a stall door. Yeah, I don't know if you like the kind of slapsticky kind of humor, it's okay. But I think this is definitely like a child, kids movie.
Oh yeah,
I think it's rated PG, and I think, if you're adolescent up to the point at which you're like, maybe 10 to 12, I think this movie drops off considerably in terms of laughter. I still think that adults can watch it and get some kind of like, good feeling charm type stuff out of it. But I don't think that the comedy has aged very well, although I don't really remember laughing a whole lot when I saw it for the first time. Believe it or not, I was alive in 2003, and I believe I saw this in the theater.
Wow.
Yes, I am really that old.
Dated yourself there.
I just did it. Try and stop me, copper.
Wow. So we do need to start winding down, unfortunately. So let's get into a couple of the things that we were saving for later. One, I believe, was the turn from James Caan that you found to be a bit hokey, and that was in repairing the relationship with his son by quitting his job. So let's dive into that for a bit.
Yeah. So it's really annoying. I mean, all he really has to do is say, man, I'm going to spend more time at home, or man, I'm going to be more present when I'm around you, and really value the time we spend together, because daddy actually has to put food on the table, because working for a living and providing value to people is actually something that should be celebrated. Not, well, I'm going to quit right now and yay, I did it. I quit. And now we're homeless. Because I don't know if you know this or not, it actually costs a lot of money to live in New York City. I mean, even though they got some horrific rent control situation that is turning that city into a disaster area, but it's a good thing to have a job. And I mean, sure, he's probably, got a whole bunch of experience. He'll get another job and blah, blah, blah. But I didn't appreciate the pressure situation and then the celebrated turn of, I quit. It's not like his job was like horrible. It's not like his boss was unreasonable. I mean, maybe, the only reason he was having to do this pitch is because he screwed up the other job. So it was all on him. He was the one that should have stayed and should have told it is a good lesson to teach his son. Like, no, son, I screwed this up. So I need to fix this. And this is me fixing this. And in life, you should, stand up and solve your own problems.
Right. And you don't get the reward right away. You got to put in the effort.
Right. It's a good teachable moment for a dad and a son. Instead, it's, I quit. Yay, you quit, Dad. We're all going to go hungry. It's like, what? Ugh. Now he's like now he graduates from being a capitalist to a socialist. And that's like a progression somehow. Now we're going on the dole, kid. Yay.
Yeah. Well, now James Caan's character also was responsible for driving Buddy away.
He was, and that was inexplicable. Like, and not that I totally understood the whole driving Buddy away. I mean, he did just completely insult this man that they had brought in to help them with this project.
Yeah, let's talk about Miles Finch a bit, because there's some good meat in that.
There is, but hang on just a second. So he did, embarrass the guy, and so he justifiably storms out. But why all of a sudden does James Caan have this turn where all of a sudden, oh no, I've got to find Buddy? Like, I just kicked him out and now I feel guilty. Maybe he feels a little bit guilty, but I think he was totally justified in saying, hey, Buddy, get out of here. We can't have you acting like this in this situation. This is completely unacceptable behavior. And then he feels guilty, and then he's going to quit his job to go find Buddy all of a sudden for some reason in the middle of New York City. I mean, I don't know about you, but New York City isn't exactly the smallest little town that you can just go out there and find somebody. I mean, I know it's a movie, and so they find him like immediately, but I mean, come on. Anyway.
Well, my take on it was that he went a step too far with Buddy and telling him to get out of his life and never come back. And I think that might have been the seed of guilt that he had. And then his son coming saying, hey, Buddy left a message or left a note and he's run away. And this is where Walter Hobbs it dawns on him that not only did he screw up with Buddy, but now his son, who has been missing a relationship with him as well, is now asking for him to help him. And so that's what helps him to turn. And then also his boss, who had him meet on Christmas Eve, in the evening on Christmas Eve, which he probably felt was a bit too much of a demand, too much of a, I hate this term, but to use ask as a noun, too much of an ask.
Everybody else was there.
That's true.
Everybody, he was there on Christmas Eve. It wasn't like he was phoning it in from his home. And all the other executives were there.
But I think it was enough. Well, the whole board was there, actually.
The whole board was there, and they were all there because James Caan screwed up the other job.
Not only did he screw it up, but he said that even if those 2 pages were there, it would have been a crappy book.
So so I mean, they should be firing his dumb ass.
Right. Basically, they should be firing him anyway. But let's talk about Miles Finch a little bit, because they bring this guy in who is so hyper specialized in this very specific thing, this very sought after niche thing, that he can name his price and have, what do they call it? A rider of demands. Like the car must be 71 degrees, must be a Mercedes S-Class, picks me up from the airport. I need 6 bottles of spritzer water, chilled, all this stuff, all of these things in his demand, because he can name his price. He can name his demands, that he wants in the agreement before he will even set up a meeting with them.
Right, because he is so in demand, because he has developed this one unique skill. Like if he was just like somebody who was good at sweeping floors, well, you could probably find 1 million people who could sweep floors pretty good. But this guy, there's only one of in the entire world that he's developed this one amazing ability to come up with incredible children's books.
Related to vegetables or not.
Right, so they're completely happy to do whatever he asks for just to get him there to pitch them, a few ideas.
Right. And Tyrion Lannister is so good that Hobbs's 2 writers who are on the payroll to write books for him, rather than writing books, they go and get Tyrion Lannister.
Yeah, and isn't one of them like in Tenacious D, and the other one is like
Conan's sidekick. Yeah, it's Andy Richter and Kyle Gass.
Yeah, who do a pretty good job. I mean, they're pretty funny. So
yeah, they're funny, and they're little bit parts here.
Yeah, it's funny to see them there anyway.
So one other thing I wanted to bring up, and this is the end of my notes.
Okay.
I really enjoyed how the Central Park Rangers are depicted as the most evil bad guys ever. Like they are literally the Nazgul.
They are the Nazgul. That was not accidental that they made them look exactly like the Nazgul.
and basically, I mean, they're these highly specialized police officers, right?
Yeah, like all in black and storming around.
Very menacing.
I did appreciate that. What did you think of the real world fact that it's illegal to damage a tree in New York City?
I think it really should be down to who owns that tree and whether there is a property crime.
Agreed.
But yeah, they made reference to Buddy cut down this tree in Central Park, and James Caan's like, oh, so now my son's out there committing felonies. And I think it's Harvey Silvergate, who is an attorney who's written a book called 3 Felonies a Day, where he talks about all of the myriad laws that are on the books in various jurisdictions in the United States, where on average, every adult in the United States, on average, commits 3 felonies per day, whether they know it or not.
Yeah, so I did appreciate that Buddy just chops down a tree because, he needed a Christmas tree. So he committed a felony unwittingly, just like all the rest of us. So that's good.
All right. So any other points you want to make before we get into our final summary and review, Robert?
No, I think we covered everything. There weren't a whole lot of notes that I took, just a few, beats that we have all covered. So let's wrap this bad boy up like a nice big fat Christmas present.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and give it a start. And I meant to mention this earlier, but this role, we talked about Jim Carrey briefly and how this would be a vehicle that would be something that would be built around his kind of comedic style. Like some whole movies are built around letting the comedian do what they do. Like Liar Liar, which was an episode we did about 2 months ago, was very much like that for Jim Carrey. And it turns out in reading the research on the background of this movie, Elf, that Jim Carrey was considered for the role and turned it down. And so I wonder if that's one of the reasons why we kind of see that similarity, where it's sort of one of those vehicles to kind of let that comedian do what that comedian does.
Yeah, it strikes me as very much that. And, I think it worked. I think Will Ferrell plays that character well. I mean, it's a movie that's been well received, and it's had legs that have lasted this long at least. So,
yeah, if anything, I think the momentum is building. This is becoming classic status already.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, much like Die Hard.
A more deserving film, but yes, much like Die Hard.
All right, so here is my summary and review. I actually enjoyed this film quite a bit. It has aged pretty well for me, and I enjoyed Favreau's directing and the forced perspective that they do to make the size of the different characters when they're in the North Pole. It seems actually rather convincing. There's only one moment where I notice where the Ming Ming character played by Peter Billingsley, he has his quota sheet and he passes it through a table that should be solid, but because of how they're shooting the scene and it's not CGI or anything, it's actually Will Ferrell's like super close to you and all the other characters are further away, and the set is built in such a way to where it looks like they are on the same plane. And for the most part, I think they did an exceptional job of that. And the story, for the most part, it has a bit of a turn. It's got Hobbs, who's this caricature of the twirling mustache evil capitalist, who's got a poor relationship with his son, and so they build a turn for him. They have a turn for Zooey Deschanel with the singing bit. A lot of it is the fish out of water story, like we talked about earlier, and it's really a vehicle to get Will Ferrell to do some childlike comedy. And I think it works overall and ends up being rather sweet, and it did jerk a few tears out of me at the end. Not like literal tears, but a little bit of the choky upness and bonus points for my kids enjoying it. So I'm going to go really high on this thing with an 8.7, Robert.
Wow. Okay. That's startling review. Okay.
That's shocking. That's shocking.
I'm shocked right now. I don't even know. I can't even. So Elf, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to say? Will Ferrell does a pretty good job playing this buffoonish child character. No doubt enhanced by just like watching his own children probably at the time and kind of copying their mannerisms and the things that they would do. I think it works okay. It's not, rocket science. It's not. If this movie is like a holiday classic, then the standards of holiday classic are not super high. It's okay. It's very kind of paint by numbers, let a comedian do his comedic shtick and we'll follow along. It gets a few little clever points here and there that I do enjoy, like the holiday cheer and the Nazgul and, a few kind of fun things. Zooey Deschanel is smoking hot. I thought that their interaction was, fairly charming. So I saw it wasn't like they had zero chemistry. It was a little bit forced, but, of course it has to be. So, luckily there wasn't like a whole lot of like romantic scenes between them because I don't think they look like a good couple, but whatever. I didn't laugh, and I got to judge a movie, comedy based on, if it still holds up and makes me laugh. I thought it had a fair amount of charm, so I'm not going to give this a negative review. I think the charm wins me over. This is a movie, I think, where Metacritic gets it exactly right. There's a 64% on Metacritic, so my rating is exactly a 6.4 for Elf. I recommend it only insofar as much that, you can watch it with kids and stuff. I think after you reach like your teenage years, the comedy wears thin, but the charm probably lives on much longer, and it carries it through. So that's what you get from me tonight. Thanks, everybody.
And Merry Festivus, Merry Christmas, and all of that, everyone.
Yeah.
This is our Christmas episode from The Last Nighters, episode 51. And the show notes and more can be found at lastnighters.com/51. Now, speaking of Christmas movies, we did do a lot of talking about Die Hard, which, of course, stars Bruce Willis.
Oh?
And so what better way to follow up the second most Christmas movie ever than with a Bruce Willis movie like Death Wish, which we will cover next week on the show.
Yeah, the not much celebrated Death Wish, reboot, I assume it is, 2018?
It's the new version, remake of the original series starring Chuck Bronson, of which the first one is actually very highly regarded, and they get increasingly worse. And the fifth one was made when he was 72 years young.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So this movie, Death Wish, was recommended by a friend of mine who says that the last 10 minutes makes a really good argument. So we're looking forward to that. I want to see what this argument is and just how good it is. And we are going to evaluate that argument on the next episode.
Next episode. Neither one of us have seen it just yet, but we will be watching it this week as we celebrate the holidays with our friends and family. So I think that's going to do it for us on this Festivus evening, the night before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everyone. And if you want to get some of our pre-show bonus content where we talked about some Christmas gatherings that we both attended recently, you can do so at lastnighters.com/Patreon. Also, as I mentioned before, Tom Woods has a 35% off deal on his Liberty Classroom product, and you can find that at lastnighters.com/Liberty Classroom. There will also be links on the show notes page. Thank you again for joining us for this very belated episode. We do appreciate you sticking with us due to the delays caused by the power outage and the internet taking me back to the anarcho-primitive stage. But we have since recovered and are now in a new golden age of completing the show. So thank you guys very much. And I will say good night from last night.